Alice was a dream. It was,
Yeah.
there was no options. We didn't have the overhead to have all the staff we wanted. There was pressures every day. We had, staff members were far more like Swiss Army knives than specialists. So everyone was doing everything. And I don't know how I would have gotten to this point
didn't work as hard.
if I hadn't put in
had
that amount of hours.
Hello and welcome to the Real Good Property Podcast, a podcast by Neighbor Good, designed for the next generation of property entrepreneurs doing cool things. Today we have Jacques van Embden, the founder and CEO of Blok Developments. If you know anything about Blok, they've been around the Sea Point neighborhood doing incredible things. There's cranes dotted all down Main Road, and he's been someone who's completely transformed the built environment in that neighborhood, as well as the rest of Cape Town. He shares some of his tactics, his personal stories that are super valuable for anyone in the property and entrepreneurial space. Enjoy. Welcome to the Real Good Podcast by Neighbor Good. We're here for episode 2 with Jacques van Embden from Blok, one of the best industry-known property developers in Cape Town by far, doing some exceptional work in Cape Town and have done some exceptional work across the city for a long time. Jacques, welcome and thank you for being here. It's awesome to have you again, and it's good to see you in the Bokke outfit today. After this week, I think everyone's got the Springboks on their lips.
Yeah.
You are also doing world-class work. I want to put Blok aside for 1 second, which is difficult for someone who lives and breathes their company. I know how it goes, and I want to look at your personal routine because you're obviously a really successful guy who lives, breathes, and sleeps his work, but there's other reasons that you're successful as well. What does a typical day look like in your life?
Sure. Firstly, thank you for all the lavish, kind words. I still feel like it's very much so a work in progress. Then I don't feel like I'm anywhere near the destination yet. And there's a lot of good work that's been done, but I always feel like there's a lot more good work to come still. And we've got to finish a lot of the good work that's underway. Typical day, I'm pretty routined. I love the beautiful saying is routines will set you free. So my weeks are well engineered and crafted. But yeah, it's normally, if I could choose, it'd be waking up before my little boy wakes up. I go downstairs, make a coffee, stand and stare at the ocean for like 5 minutes. Then I'll do this just a short meditation, 5, 6, 7 minutes to start the day. I make myself a little fresh salad, like in a kind of a Mediterranean salad, cucumbers, tomatoes, a bit of cheese and some seeds. That's breakfast, like 5 days a week. It's pretty routine. Then little boy will wake up, Rafi, and we will kind of do breakfast together, which is always a battle. As we know, we want to give them healthy food and they want all the chocolate coated cereals. And then kind of, and this is a great day because it's the best way that I can start it. I'll get him dressed and take him to school. And that kind of, it's just, I've had a bit of me time. I've kind of stared at nature. I've had a bit of kind of calming down time and some time with my son. So that's victory. It feels like the day. That's, many things can go wrong after that, but
Yes.
My gosh, you can't take that start away from me. Then I've kind of, my week after that is there's full days of work. It's normally like 8:30 to around about 5 p.m. Try to then do exercise or do something with my son at 5 to kind of have a break. And then we'll run on the prom. I see you there. It's the promenade's like one of the best physical assets we could have. If I don't have my boy, can hop up and down Lion's Head. It's another amazing physical asset we have like on our doorstep. Dip in the ocean, watch the sunset, like ending the day, like a bit of exercise, bit of ocean water and a bit of sunset. It just, the day wins. Yeah. I love cooking. So if I can cook dinner, that's always a win. Really wonderful. And then, depending where we're on the front or the back of the week, back of the week is probably a wine or whiskey, kind of making its way into my life. Front end of the week, it's normally catch up work for an hour or two and then into bed. Always trying to get as much sleep as I can. And then the work days are pretty kind of structured. Like Mondays is all about my leadership team. So meet as a leadership team, do our one-on-ones, and set up my personal week. And I always prep on a Sunday. Tuesdays is typically around projects. The other side of the business does brokerage and sales. Wednesdays is ad hoc. Thursdays is back to projects, and Fridays is ad hoc. So I kind of know what Monday to Friday, what the themes are. So I thematically set up the days, and it doesn't run perfectly, but at least it kind of gives me a chance. And so yeah, that's I'm pretty. I've gotten better at my workaholism, much better than I ever used to. You know, I think before, and I think having a kid has like massively motivated some really positive changes to my life. Where it's like used to try get to work at like 7:15, used to leave work 7 p.m. and just like sacrifice health, sacrifice personal time, and like outside time. You know, it's like could go a day and I couldn't tell you what the weather was. You know, and that's like, and so I think it's been a lot like. It's taken a lot of work, you know. And I always try caution whenever and I love listening to podcasts or reading up information is always because I'm a big comparer and I have to manage myself. As balance was a dream. It was, there was no options. We didn't have the overhead to have all the staff we wanted. There was pressures every day. We had, you know, staff members were far more like Swiss Army knives than specialists. So everyone was doing everything, and balance wasn't an option. I wouldn't have got to this point if I don't know how I would have gotten to this point.
Didn't work
if
as hard.
If I hadn't put in that amount of hours. Yeah. And so, yeah, I like think balance is a bad word.
Yes. Work-life harmony is apparently a little bit better to find.
Yeah. I heard someone describe it perfectly. It's like, if I like think balance is a bad word.
Yes. Work-life harmony is apparently a little bit better to find.
Yeah, I heard someone describe it perfectly. It's like, if you find balance, everything must stop and not move. Because you think about a ballet dancer, their dream is to balance
to freeze in
a moment. I'm like, that's not living. You know, it's like it's a moment. You can have balance for a second maybe.
So, being an entrepreneur, especially in the first 3 to 5 years / probably up to 10, really is really tough. And you're talking about trying to manage finance and like teams. You didn't have the luxury of having the team that you. How did that migration happen? Was it slowly to a point where you looked up and you're like, okay, the business is successful from a property and finance perspective, or was it gradual?
It's very gradual, very incremental. I think in my experience and in my peer group's experience, normally companies, when they start, most of them do a few things well, not everything.
Yes.
So we came out and we did branding and marketing and design really well. But in our delivery, we weren't great. In our customer service, we were lacking. And in our finance, we had a lot of room to improve, you know, in our cash management and cash control. And also our business model was a bit too flawed. We were a bit too, our appetite for risk was too big.
Okay, got you.
And so like our acquisition management and pipeline management and kind of your liquidity management was off. And so we then tried to invest in other parts, and kind of almost one at a time we were fixing each department. But then again, it was when we opened Blok, you could stand on Regent Road and hold out an offer and someone would park and sign, you know. Capital growth was like 22 to 25% year on year. So you selling wasn't an art. It was just being in the like be there and you can sell. And then suddenly something we thought was working, we came to 2018, 19, the market cooled off aggressively. And my gosh, we had to like go really work hard and figure out how to sell. So I think I'll come back to the team. But in terms of like, you're not going to be good at everything on day one. And a lot of the art is about figuring out which thing to improve on next, because you can only do so many things at a point in time. You can maybe achieve 2 or 3 major improvements in your business in a year. That's again my experience. And so and then what you hoped would be for example, COVID. So we're figuring out how to sell, and we were kind of getting better, and then you got like we went from
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, we got PK'd by COVID, you know, and so we had to, I hope that's okay to say.
No, it's fine.
So, and so that was, and then, you've got to be responsive. And then I think internally in the team, I did a lot of work growing on myself as a leader. I didn't do any business, any leadership kind of training or skills or formal education. And it was a lot of hard lessons I had to learn. And I was very lucky. Some team members that believed in me, and so I don't know what they saw. I'm like, damn, like, good. I'm very grateful you made this choice, but I'm like, I don't know what made you make this choice. And they helped me grow, and I helped them grow. And so, and you know, the teams changed a lot, but I started to, one of the big changes that happened kind of 3 or 4 years in was I stopped seeing the whole company as my responsibility, and I started seeing my leadership team as my responsibility, because it was too much to worry about. And so I just started investing heavily in spending time with them, working with them, improving them, how I was interacting with them, how they were interacting with me, their jobs, their understanding, and really, and my main job is my leadership team, you know, like, well, certainly one of my top jobs. And I've been really blessed, like over the past period, to have had people back and kind of work with people. And it hasn't always been easy. I can be quite a high conflict guy when it comes to the work, not interpersonally, but when we disagree about something, or we're like struggling on what side to buy, what design to go for, what's the right product, I'm happy to and contest ideas or thoughts or insights quite hard. So and I needed certain leaders that could
push back,
correct, stand with me and not shrink. And I had to learn, or I also had to grow that. Like, it had to be tempered. You know, my ex-head of developments, we always used, like, there'd be some days where, you know, we really give each other, you know, quite a bit, and then be after work, you know, 7:30, there'd be like the phone, hey, just checking, it's all about work, you know. And I always try and frame it, it's like, it's not about the player, it's about the game.
Yes.
So we're trying to figure out how to play the game really well, man. You know, and so
it's a hard balance to get right. You need strong leaders in positions who can give you feedback that's necessary, because it's not like we all know everything. You know, it's a team sport, really. Any business, and running a business is actually more about the team than anything else, and the direction that you're going. I want to understand that in a property company, and building a team, and the specific teams that you're talking about, not necessarily the people, but just more what building a team looks like in a property development company. So what are the team members on your management team in terms of their roles, and how would you go about building that as an entrepreneur in the property space starting a company? Because it's difficult, because you can't actually afford, you know, to hire financial managers and XYZ, and you've got to possibly outsource a bit of that in the beginning. But tell us about how your team is structured, if you'd be open to sharing that.
Sure. I think, so there's maybe two ways to look at it. The one is where it is now, but that's kind of quite sophisticated with 9 years of kind of growth and function on it. And then there's maybe in the beginning. I'd quickly start at the beginning. I'd say something that I didn't give enough credence to and enough time and effort was the finance management.
Got you.
And I think there are great ways to outsource it, great like part-time CFO businesses. They're great outsourced accounting firms, but it's not so much just keeping books like debit and credits and kind of producing management accounts. It's like you need financial smarts, because property is the numbers get big quick, you know. And so I would have certainly invested, and at the beginning, as you said, you got that little pot, and you're trying to figure out how to cut up that pie. And I mean, that cake is small. You got the revenue is not there. You got to try to figure out how you're going to give, you know, what salaries can you do. But I probably would have overweighted it, but that's hindsight in my experience. So I think finance would be something I would have outsourced or insourced more aggressively, like with bigger budgets over there, because it's how you make decisions. You know, good decision making comes from good reporting, and good reporting is the finance teams and the finance people's, you know, bread and butter. So I think that's starting off. That's certainly something I'd look at doing. And then I'd probably look at, in the beginning, I would have been a little bit more reflective on what I think I'm good at and what other people think I'm good at versus what I'm bad at, and try to hire for the weaknesses. Whereas I kind of had the approach, I can do everything. You know, it's like, like, even if I know other people can do it better, but I don't have enough budget, so I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to do, you know, and then bring someone else on who's also going to do everything. And then we're a whole bunch of people doing everything, which is another way of saying a lot of people doing nothing, you know. So I think that was some of the lessons learned in the beginning. Now, for us specifically, and I mean very much so like your business, Murray, there's a big B2C component.
Got
You know,
you.
you've got a big customer relationship side. So we've got, we kind of break our business down into three components. We call it the brokerage side of the business. So that does marketing, branding, sales, and that side. Then we've got the development side of the business. They're responsible for acquisitions, design, project planning, contracting, oversight on the project's execution, handover, occupation, all that stuff. So that's the development team. And then we've got head office and finance.
Okay.
Yeah. And so
Got
those
you.
are kind of the three pots. And there's some breaking down that's over there. But again, that's very much so. We're a branded residential real estate developer selling ourselves to the market. We do
Got
like
you.
98% of our sales are achieved by an internal sales team. So it's and that's the choice we've made. Other people do different models.
I wanted to ask you about that. How important has that been to your journey? Because you are really strong on the brand facing side, and outside of the financial benefit, I also feel like there's like your brand is now dealing with the consumer, which I really like in the business. Not because I don't like brokers, more just because I like controlling the brand experience than anything else. How important has internalizing the sales process been for Blok?
I think it's huge. For me, I think one of the biggest things over and above the customer experience, which you can have a high degree of agency on. And again, that's part of that big shift to branded real estate and customer facing real estate. The other thing that it's helped us substantially is we've got an amazing understanding of what the market wants. So our sales team and our development team, when we conceptualize our projects, they actually spend quite a lot of time discussing things together. So what are people looking for? What are the limitations? What can people afford? What's desire? What's appetite? You know, and there's no better way. I mean, our sales team is 4 people at the moment. They're interacting with 5 to 10 customers a day. So you're getting like a meaningful litmus like test of what's actually happening in the market. And that's allowed us to respond really quickly. And I mean, even I remember in 2020 when we were doing our first micros, because of that relationship with our clients, we were able to set up a whole bunch of working groups with clients and like ask them about what they were looking for and have that relationship. Whereas we wouldn't have been able to get that kind of R&D on a new product done so quickly with people that we knew were in market and with customer. And it still consistently drives us. Like we're got a really beautiful penthouse coming in our new project. We're able to go, okay, well, this is what people are looking for price-wise, product-wise, versus I think old school property development concept was build it and they will come.
Yes.
And I think that's not the way the world works as easily anymore. So you've got to be far more client-centric, and having that connection to potential clients and existing clients has helped our product development process massively.
Got you.
Yeah.
In terms of C Point, it's now top 40 from what I'm seeing in the world on the Time Out magazine. I think is where I read it. You started off in Woodstock and a whole bunch of different areas in the city, but C Point's definitely been a big focus for you. Why C Point?
Again, I think it was timing and heads up. We were doing kind of medium-sized apartment buildings of, let's say, 9 to, I think the biggest one was 53 apartments, and they were kind of not connected to a high street. And, you know, the land prices are going up. The buyers on those large apartments were struggling to get the unit economics to work. And then they introduced some changes to legislation around parking for the main street. That empowered us to bring some new products to the market. The zoning was great. It was kind of undervalued and unseen by the rest of the market. So timing, because the legislation changing on parking unlocked it.
Yes.
But we had to have a heads up view and say like, wow, actually these sites are quite undervalued. And there's not anymore, you know, 3 years. It's one thing about property is it's public and everyone can come and kick your tires, you know.
Yes.
Someone can come walk into your spot and be like, oh, cool. This is what, this is what Neighbor Good's doing here, you know, and like walk around and exactly.
Completely.
So you kind of, it's an exposed kind of, development space.
Product.
But so, yeah. And then, I think on the last pod we spoke a little bit about Latin America and how I fell in love with Latin design, and I've always loved high streets, and like I think high streets and public assets and public spaces are big components of deriving culture. So if you take like culture is developed in the V&A, which is so much more than a shopping center, it's a place to visit. Culture is developed on our mountains, on our promenades, in the poolside spaces, and on Bree Street and Long Street. That's kind of where you can really develop culture. And so I think the big resonance for us is that it is that mixed use living that you get, which we don't have. There's very few fantastic high street areas in South Africa. We kind of directionally moved in an American white picket fence estate model. I mean, that's great. I think there's room in the world for both. I'm certainly far more, and the team at Blok, we're very passionate about urban spaces. And yeah, so Sea Point, lots of timing, lots of heads up looking at kind of what the opportunities were. And it lets us do what we love, which is 80% residential buildings with 20% on the bottom, like connecting into a neighborhood and really contributing to half the team lives in the Atlantic seaboard.
Yeah.
So, that they want cool stuff.
Yeah, for
to
sure.
come into their suburb, it's their hood, so they really want to be proud of it. And what I also really love about it is there's a youthfulness that urban spaces have. And I say that because it changes. And if you become change resistant, that's like, let's say you're a bit more set in your ways. But change, if you're open to it, it's quite a youthful approach. And I'm not young anymore, which is why I say youthful. So it's not a young approach. And that's kind of, I love that, and it resonates with us. So long may it last. We've got a few more sites already secured in the Atlantic seaboard, which is great. And I think there's so much positive momentum around Cape Town and the Western Cape, and then within that, the very Latin urban living experience that you get in the Atlantic seaboard, which is uniquely complemented by Table Mountain at Lion's Head and Signal Hill as your backdrop, and then the ocean in front with a promenade. So it's
hard not to love.
Yeah, there's limited spots in the world that offer that kind of package.
Now, if I were to take one of those crystal balls and look into the future, what is the world going to do with all these empty office buildings?
Well, I mean, you're taking up some of them, which is great. Yeah, I think there's some trends that are. I almost want to push it look at it from one more angle. Is I think there's going to be certain cities that are going to really struggle with the office crisis, and others that won't. So I think we've seen it, Joburg versus Cape Town. You've got like a Sao Paulo versus Rio de Janeiro. You've got a New York versus Miami. And you've had kind of, let's call them inland cities, Joburg, Sao Paulo, New York, even though it's on the water, it's freezing cold. It's not like lifestyle weather.
Yes.
And they've all been centers of financial power and big offices and big spaces, and kind of a focus on offices and work at the expense of lifestyle.
Yeah.
Whereas those other cities that had a bit more of a lens on lifestyle, and I think what we're seeing is a mashup, and Cape Town and Rio and Miami are suddenly really getting, they're growing up a little bit professionally,
yes,
but still keeping that lifestyle element. So I think the office spaces in those lifestyle cities are not going to be under as much pressure, because there will still be a need for office space. But then I think we're going to have in those in those previously like financial centers, I think they're going to have a huge crisis on their hands, because they're losing population to these more great places to live where you can work and everything. And they've got these huge office spaces, but there's a big backlog of housing and accommodation almost globally. So there's a great opportunity in that to do kind of product like what you do, the great product you guys do at Neighborgood, and other people doing different products. So I think it's building new buildings is very expensive, and the environmental cost is also substantial. And there's great opportunities in having a lower price point to be innovative and be inventive and creative. And so I think there's great opportunity, and I think hopefully lots of it'll be living, like well located. That's the other good thing, is these buildings are
phenomenally located.
Yeah, so that's great. But yeah, I think it'll be. I think there's a bit more nuance than office as a whole category.
Yes.
I think it's got to be located in those cities. And even though London has got quite a bit of office space, it doesn't have the same volume of office space as in relation as a Sao Paulo and it doesn't have a competitor lifestyle city
yes
that it's trading off. So
Good point,
London's like actually kind of shown a bit more resilience because
Yes.
there is no other choice.
Yeah.
Whereas, I mean, we've all seen semigration take place. You know, the
Yes.
whole of Joburg is looking to do the Western Cape or the whole of Gauteng if they can, because it's a lifestyle choice, and that's wonderful.
Yeah, completely. Jacques, to finish off, at every podcast, we ask our guests to share something in the world about a person, about a company, or about a community that's doing good in the world. Neighbor Good as a company, our mission is to really bring good to neighborhoods, and we like sharing good news. Is there any story of a person or a company that you might have that you'd be willing to share that people could listen about?
Um, I mean, it's just someone we've worked with for a very long time. It's Hannes from Straatwerk, and he's a really amazing man that runs a bootstrapped little NGO, and they work with trying to get people that are homeless or going through a period of homelessness or any form of addiction, whatever it might be, and they try and recover them. And
Awesome.
that's really hard work on the fringes of society, and it's quite a difficult, sticky problem, and it requires a lot of faith and belief and doing good, which I know you speak about a lot. He's got to wake up every day, and he faces really tough parts of society, and just his self-sacrifice that he's done in his life for this really difficult part of society that we need to try and bring back into the fold,
Got you.
and he's just someone who's been at it doing
Has he?
the thankless work for I think 2 decades now.
Is he in Cape Town?
Yeah, Cape Town
Awesome.
based. Yeah.
Amazing. We'll put that in the show notes.
Yeah.
It's been really good to have you, man. I can't wait to see what Blok do next. You guys have been leading the charge, and it's really inspiring. So thank you for being on our podcast today. And we'll hopefully see you in the news and on the promenade and in Sea Point. Thanks, Jacques.
Thank you so much for having me, and I'm sure we'll bump on the prom.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.